One. Hi, everyone. My name is Mikey. This is Tyler, and we are the founders of Innovative Start Organization. Innovative Start teaches financial literacy to students and young adults with the goal of informing, not persuading. And today we'll be talking about a few misconceptions and woes that we face as far as financial literacy. These will just be a couple stories. We'll, go back and forth as far as like some of the silly things that we did and things that we wish we would have known. But yeah, I'll go ahead and start off with, let's see, probably when I went to college. I think the biggest thing that I did not know, but I feel like if I was to redo it or anything like that, is taking those first 2 years and doing community college or dual enrolling while I was in high school. And I think the biggest thing too is like people get FOMO a lot, like especially as a younger person. So like, you're like, man, I want to be on campus, freshman. And you always hear all the stories, especially like upperclassmen that went there, and you're like, yeah, let me just go ahead and get on campus. But the reality is that once you get through those couple years, you're like, now you're starting to like look back, and you're like, I just spent a whole bunch of money, or I got to take out this much financial aid, or whatever. And I was just my first year at like a it was like a closet space for two people. That was 5,700 a semester. When I moved, I think the most expensive place I stayed out my like college kind of like 4.5 years I was there, it was 630 a month. That was about $6,000 plus a year, no more than like I think like 7K for the whole year versus a semester being 5,700. My Like it was crazy. Um, I just was thinking back to myself and I was like, this doesn't make any sense. I really just thought that, oh, let me get on campus or whatever, having that FOMO. But I was sitting there, I was like, man, I could have came in with more credits so I can get ahead. Those gen eds, you're basically when you get into college, if you don't come in with any credits, you're gonna be retaking courses at like a college level that you kind of like lapped over in high school. So if you can dual enroll, I think I had 2 credits I dual enrolled for, but um that really made like a big difference because I was talking to other um students and stuff when I was in college, and some of them would be freshmen coming in at a junior level with 60 credits, and that was crazy to me. You have those AP classes and everything else that qualify, but I was like, bro, you're fresh in here and you're junior level, and they might have like one or two gen eds that are required because universities will always make sure that you're taking some type of gen ed. You're not hopping straight in, but yeah, I feel like that's just one thing to be honest. Tyler, was there any like financial woes you face as far as like campus living or being in a dorm? I know like a lot of people they just jump straight into the dorm stuff. So many limitations too. But
Yeah, I feel like it depends on what you want your experience to be.
mhm,
I feel like knowing our backgrounds, because of some of the financial hardships we went through personally growing up, at least for me, I just wanted to get out of there and make some money. Like, yeah, I enjoyed college, but I wasn't like that. Um, my enjoyment was not the reason I was there, I guess, for lack of better words. So I think that'll depend on someone's decisions as well, unfortunately. Or well, just whatever. I mean, it is what it is. People can do what they want with their own lives. But um, yeah, like I think one just stupid thing that I would do is just always have the latest clothes. Like
mhm,
I don't know, like I see myself as like somewhat of a minimalist now.
mhm,
But if you're always keeping up with the latest fashion trends, that is so much money. And I'm not saying like there's a time and place, and like it's good to get a few things, or maybe you can like low key thrift shop to like the latest trends. I don't know how you want to do it, but it is just so expensive.
mhm,
And that's one thing that I did a lot in high school. Like I had a really good job that I got a ton of tips. Like I would walk away on a weekend. I would work like a 10 or 12 hour shift on a Saturday, walk away with $200 plus in just cash tips. And I would spend it all on clothes. And I was like, looking back, I'm like, man, I just wish I would have saved. Um, so those are a few things. Like, one thing in college was eating out. Like, I wish I would have meal prepped a little bit more. Eating out is so easy, or like If you eat out, like have like an appetizer.
Yeah.
Or if you go to Cane's, don't get the big Cane's meal, just get the smaller one and eat a snack. Like these things, you know, $2 or $3, 2 or 3 times a week add up incrementally over time. Um, and there's one viewpoint in that area of like you can, some people have the viewpoint of like get the Starbucks coffee, just go make more money. Well, in college, you can't go out there and make more money, like you're limited, I guess, for lack
Hmm.
of a better word. So that is a time to save.
Yeah, because you're really just studying at that point. You don't really have time to do actual 40 hours a week plus that. And there are people that do that, but at the same
Sure.
time, like what we're talking about, a majority of college students, most of them are working somewhere near campus or are going back home during holidays to work. So,
Right. Well, and that's the thing too, is I know someone that went to trade school at a community college for 2 years in Georgia. You can get that fully covered through Zell scholarship, and now they're making 55K plus at their job. They went to college for free. They stayed at home. I mean, thankfully, they had that opportunity to stay at home. Some people don't. But even if you had to pay $600 or $700 a month, the fact that you can go to a trade school for 2 years and come out making 55K with the opportunity to grow is
mhm.
just insane to me. So I think that's another thing that people really need to think about. But again, some people want to go the corporate route. I mean, we both did. Let's be honest here.
Mhm.
That's the more sexy thing than going to trade school. I think those times are changing because plumbers make a good amount more than I do, and so that's it'll be interesting to say the least. So that's something I wish I would have thought about when it came to just college and
Mhm.
some scholarships and things like that.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think if there's any other like shoes, shoes and clothes really
Yeah.
got me.
That
And
was me too. I was when I first got like my first job was like right when I was like between 15 and 16. One thing I did not know is about like the union fees. So the place I worked at had like was a part of a union, and that was getting taken out of my paycheck. My first job was like 7.65 an hour. Nothing. I was getting paid pennies on the dollar. I think I was making like we got paid weekly. It was like $80 at most if I did like a 20-hour shift. Um, like throughout the week. So I was just like, this is crazy. I was saving up money though. Like I was really saving. So like I worked there, I think about 6 months almost. Um, and it was like a lot of like when you work those like first jobs as a high school person, most of the time they're very like grueling tasks. Like you're going to be either standing for long periods of times or whatever, whether it's retail, etc. But that was a very like physical task, like pushing carts and bagging all day, but the pushing carts is probably the most physical. I think I was getting fit low key pushing like 10+
probably,
carts. Yeah. And then all
yeah.
conditions too. It didn't matter. Rain, snow,
Oh yeah.
it doesn't matter.
People
Yeah.
still coming in.
Yeah. So it was crazy too, because you would come in and you'd be like, ain't nobody coming in this weather. It was he was still but besides the point. Um I saved up that money and I didn't even have a bank account at the time, which was crazy. So I was just getting like just get my check. Because you can when you start working, they're like, hey, you can do direct deposit, set up your banking or whatever. But I didn't even have that, and I was just taking my check came in, I would go to the counter, cash it right away, and then just stuff it like in a Pop-Tart box. I think that's
Go
what it
to
was.
like You go to like a grocery store, like the money order counter, like
Hmm.
go to Walmart or something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would
Yeah.
pick up my check from that counter, and then also cash it.
Hmm.
So like, hey, can I get my check? And I'm like, I'm gonna just go ahead and cash it now. And it'd be just like I said, it'd be
Yeah.
like 80, $90, which at the time, because I think the minimum wage then was like seven something, which is crazy because here in Arizona it's like 15 or somewhere around there. 12, it was like 12 or $15. But still, that's not enough, to be honest. And I think there's a huge argument that always goes a sidetrack by like what somebody should be paid in order to be a livable amount. People say this is just a high school job. This is for young people trying to figure it out. This job shouldn't be paying that. Other people be like, but there are people who don't have those degrees or are looking to pursue those degrees. How do we make sure that people can afford to, do these things, work these jobs, and then also do that? Because if you ever look at corporate structure, you'll always notice that the people that get paid the least most of the times do the most. So that's just how it works, to be honest. So when you go to a corporate level and a project manager, I always say like CEOs or glorified project managers, you're just more so the whole corporation versus a line or process attached. But that made me think a lot as far as like what I wanted to do, what my next job would be as a high school person, because I was like, I'm not doing this anymore. Like, I'm gonna make sure I'm getting something that's indoors. I always and like I didn't really want to do fast food for some reason. I was just like, I don't want to smell like food when I get home and everything else. So, yeah, my next couple jobs after that were in a retail space or like a sales associate type space where I worked like a cashier or whatnot. Um, but that it was a slow incremental like difference in pay. So the next job was like $8 an hour, and it was 8.40, then it was nine something. When I was getting paid $9 in high school, that was like unheard of. People were like, oh yeah, I was making money. The biggest thing though, every single time I worked one of those jobs, is I never saved. Every single time, shoes, anything, just clothes, just trying to like be trendy with everyone else. And I think that's
Mhm.
like a phase that everyone goes through,
Sure.
which is so hard because like it's weird because I feel like when you're older, right, and people try to give you advice, you're like, whatever. Sometimes you're like, yeah, yeah, like, and they're trying to tell you, like, same way we're telling you now, right? And we're like, yeah, like, think about it this way instead of this way. But it's so hard. I feel like you're so young. You get that job and you're like, okay, now I can start getting the things that I've been, looking for. It's like when we were younger, when the things would come on the commercial, like only 19.99 plus shipping and handling. Like, hey, mom, let me get this. But at the same time,
Oh yeah, that's why they're doing it.
yeah,
But I think it's important for us to, like it was our first sense of freedom, being
yep,
able to we don't have to rely on the supervisor, whoever was in the house you were living with. You didn't have to
yeah.
ask them for money. You could get, I'm gonna get it myself. I got my own money, whatever.
Right. You ain't gotta be like, can I get
So
a few dollars to do it, or can you buy me this? You're
yeah,
like,
I
I can
got
do it
myself.
myself. Right.
Yeah,
So,
you're not gonna give it to me. I'll give you buy it. No, I think
exactly.
that's good. I mean, I think like there's a way. I think there's a way to be practical though.
Hmm.
I'm a firm believer like you pay for what you get. So if you get a few nice T-shirts or whatever, you may just wash them a little bit more. I don't know. That's what I do at least.
Hmm.
Um, but I do some pretty crazy things to save money. Like if I make some coffee and I have some left over, I'll put that in the fridge. I'm not wasting it. But I'm called crazy by my friends. I don't care. I just heat it back up in the microwave. I don't care about coffee like that. So I'm not wasting any food. When I meal prep, no food is being wasted. It's going right back in the refrigerator and I will make sure it gets eaten.
Yeah.
I will some I will sometimes eat a snack before I go out with friends, and I'll just get an appetizer if I'm trying to save money.
Yeah.
Because in the city, some of the cities in Georgia, you're minimum spending $25 with a decent tip.
Hmm.
Um, and if you go out just once a week, that's over $100 easily
Hmm.
for the
Easily.
whole month.
Just walking
That's it.
outside is expensive because if you go out, you're more likely to spend money versus just like chilling inside in the house, right? Because you go out with some type of agenda to do something, right? And then it might come across like, oh, let me go grab some food. Like even if you go for work, right? If you don't pack a lunch or something like that and you go to work and then now you're buying a lunch and then that lunch is going to be anywhere between, 15 to $20, right? Or say, oh, I'm gonna run some errands, right? Oh, let me go get a coffee. Or oh, you're already making a purchase, right? Stepping outside is like a transaction just waiting to happen. You step foot, it's just bam. And I think that's just crazy to me because I'm like, sometimes I walk out just to get outside, but
Yeah,
with
which
everything
is
around
important.
you, it's just tempted to just be like, yeah, let me just go ahead and buy that. So you see something. I think that's a lot of things too. Is like you're like, oh my goodness, like say you see like a good deal, right? And you're like, oh, like dang, this is like I've been waiting to get this, or this is a certain amount of money, or whatever else. You'd be like, oh snap, let me just grab it while I'm here. Whole time though is that that's another thing too, looking at like this long term and short term of some of the things that you buy, right? Food being short term versus like getting a new phone or something like that is more so long
Sure.
term. But that is how I started looking at stuff when it came to buying things when I was out. If anything, I was just sitting there and I was like, you know what, this makes a lot of sense. I can, get down to it, figure it out. Okay, now I can go ahead, make the appropriate purchase or decision on it, and that just made a lot of sense to me, to be honest.
Well, and one thing we can ask ourselves if we want or if we see something we like is like, do we want
Mhm.
it or do we need it? Because I want a lot of things. I want several pairs of shoes or um I want a certain car or I want a certain computer or certain headphones. Like I'm looking at some AirPod Pro 2s. I need to get some new ones. I'm just doing research and people can say this is nasty or whatever, but I'm like, if the refurbished ones work just as well and they're almost $100 cheaper, but my belief is like from a, I don't know, it's philosophical, like psychological perspective. If you were always in the mindset of just trying to save money where you can, like it builds up over time. But if you're always not in that mindset, a decision here or there where you're not saving money, it adds up in the long run. At least that's my opinion. Like always having that switch on for that mindset.
Hmm.
So,
No, yeah,
um,
that
yeah,
makes a lot of sense, to be honest. I think overall, as far as like any misconception that I had, it was mostly based around having to understand what I was purchasing, why I was doing it. This is like just budgeting in general, but if it was something that I was like, I know I don't actually need it, and it's more of a want. I think needs and wants are like important when you go to like purchasing things or whatever. But
oh yeah,
um, and if I actually needed it, right? If I'm, if it's food or whatever, grocery shopping, not getting lunch, not going to go grab a caniac, you know, if it's actually like, okay, like, you know what, I can make sense of this, I actually need to go get groceries, right? Or if I'm thinking of, let me just make a quick purchase, why don't I just make a, run to the grocery store and actually buy some things that I can make into something that's going to last me a few more days versus, that 10, 15 minutes I'm, scrounging it down. So, yeah, overall, I think those are some really good points made. And I think like people just need to hear like that there are also other people making those same silly decisions, and then it doesn't really
yeah,
change like throughout any type of generation because people will continue to make the same mistake because that's just the way it is. Unless you can already put yourself in the mindset of how to do that. And I knew people that were frugal or whatever people say cheap. And then sometimes people be like, "Oh, you're so cheap" or whatever. But like when I got into the mindset of like, okay, this is how I need to make sure I have my, money in order to better my situation, or how do I future plan with the little money that I had as a college student? That was important, and that helped me make better decisions. And sometimes you got to make those mistakes in order for that to happen. But
sure. And it's important. Like you don't have to go out every weekend, or if you go out, like you don't need to be buying all these drinks or again, that all adds up. And there's other ways to have fun without spending money. Like a lot of people have Netflix accounts, you can have a movie night. I don't know, maybe that's another podcast we do actually, just like
mhm,
how to have fun with friends without spending a ton of money, because there are definitely ways to do it. That's the
yeah.
last thing I'll say.
All right. Well, I think those are some really good points, and I think overall, I'm looking forward to seeing if we get any, comments about other people talking about the silly decisions that they made whenever they first got their paycheck, or any mistakes that they encountered as far as like what they would help somebody else do or figure out. I know that's one thing I tell some of my younger family members is like, if they're, going to college or they just started working, like what can you do to go ahead and get ahead? So, pretty good discussion there. Anything else, Tyler?
I'm
All
good.
right. Go ahead and like the video. Comment below whatever misconceptions or myths even that you hear about certain financial pieces, and let us know in the comments. So, and please make sure you subscribe to keep up to date with all things financial literacy from ISO. Appreciate it.